prepare to race onto the field. Everything is riding on this football game. So there's a special intensity, a special urgency. Here come the Volunteers. Wherever you listen throughout the world, it's football time in Tennessee.
I want to send a special shout out to Boogie Bentley, Dauber, and the Indie Kid over at the Talkin VAWLS Network on YouTube. I also want to ask y'all to go smash that like button and subscribe to their channel on YouTube. Go Big Orange.
Welcome to the Talkin VAWLS Network. My name is Boogie Bentley.
I'm Dauber.
And I'm the Indie Kid.
This is the series, The Fall of Vol Football. It's tough. I know some of you guys don't dig it. Some of you guys love it. It's just a deep dive on what went wrong from hoisting the national championship trophy in 98 to hiring 5 coaches over the span of 13 years. We're kind of digging in. It's not one single thing. We're just kind of laying it all out there. Last episode, we kind of went through the Casey Clausen era. Today, we're going to be talking more about Eric Ainge, Brent Schaeffer, the return of David Cutcliffe. There's a lot to unpack, man. Sometimes you forget. And then as we sit here and talk in the green room before we, start the video, it's like, man, so much to unpack. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. We hit 7,000 subscribers last weekend. So thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to the Talkin VAWLS Network. If you are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Just drop just below the video. Click that subscribe button. Click that bell for notifications. You won't miss out when we go live or when we drop new content. And if you are new and you're saying, what is this? What is the Talkin VAWLS Network? Well, we're just 3 dudes. We are 3 regular dudes just like you guys. We're not insiders. We're not experts. We're just fans. And we want this to feel like you're hanging out with your buddies talking about UT athletics. We drop videos throughout the week. I'm excited about this fall. I'm excited about the Josh Heupel era. We go live immediately following every game. It's very emotional. It's no holds barred. You get the real deal.
It's raw.
Yeah. There have been fights. There have been fights on Talkin VAWLS Live. So tune in. Don't miss it. Like I said, I'm excited for this fall, but also we're trying to keep you up to date with recruiting, fall baseball. The Indie Kid dropped a video over the weekend about the return of Evan Russell. There's so much content that is going up on the channel, but let's jump right back into the fall of Vol football. I know it's a sore subject for a lot of you, but this is the Indie Kid's baby. He put this series together. So we're going to throw it over to him. Indie Kid, catch us up to speed. Where are we at in the fall of Vol football?
All right. So we broke down the 1998 season. We kind of transitioned with that into 99. We hit the Casey Clausen era, which began in 2000. Something we kind of said we would discuss, and we didn't hit with that 02 season, was the Doug Dickey retirement, which we need to really hit that. I don't know if there's much to hit on that other than around the time Doug Dickey retired, that's when things started to change there.
Critical moment in the athletic department and the changeover in leadership.
Yeah, and that's kind of going to be a theme throughout the rest of this series is admin, and that was kind of the start of it right there. But we touched on the Casey Clausen era. Now we get into 2004. It's a new era. It's the Eric Ainge, Brent Schaeffer, the Rick Clausen years, right? There's a lot in this because 2004, and we'll discuss that season, I thought was one of the better coaching jobs that happened over the last few years of the former era, especially Randy Sanders. I thought Randy Sanders really – I said it on the last video. With the 04, Randy Sanders coached his ass off in 2004 because didn't know who the quarterback was going to be coming into the season. He had 2 freshmen ready to go for UNLV. Schaeffer got hurt along the way. They hadn't really said – Ainge kind of became the guy, was pretty much, but then they kind of rotated. Both of them ended up hurt. Rick Clausen took over and did a fine job. But then, the 05 season's a different animal right there. As good as they coached and overachieved in 04, it went the exact opposite direction in 05. And then that leads to 06-07. We're really touching on the Eric Ainge era here, but there was a lot in this because after 05, during 05, after the South Carolina game, Randy Sanders resigned as offensive coordinator, and then David Cutcliffe came back in 06. So
it's funny looking back because it really is the Eric Ainge era. And I've always been, we talked last week or last episode about Casey Clausen, how much I like that guy, and Josh Dobbs. And I still, to this day, I can see it right here where I'm sitting. I have an Eric Ainge autographed jersey that my mother-in-law bought me for Christmas. I've always been an Eric Ainge fan, but when you go back to 04 and you look, who was the guy that started that first game? Who was the first true freshman quarterback to start a season opener for an SEC team since freshman eligibility was kind of a thing again in 1973? And that was Brent Schaeffer. And I kind of wonder, teaser for where we're going with this series. We're going to take you through everything, all the coaching changes, all the turmoil, but we're going to build up to a live stream at the end of this thing where we're going to spin it and it's going to get positive. And we're going to talk about what Josh Heupel can bring to the table. But going into 04, it's very similar to what we're looking at now in 2021. Who's going to be the quarterback? And it was Brent Schaeffer that took those first snaps for that opener.
Yeah, and something we kind of mentioned in the last episode too was where could it have been here? You've got two true freshmen ready to go. Like you said, Schaeffer took the first snap. Ainge played. I remember that UNLV game. It was fun, man. It was a Sunday night, ESPN. Neyland Stadium. There was a real energy and atmosphere around Knoxville that day. It was awesome. And it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of hype with the true freshmen. Much like the Chris Sims, though, part of me wonders what would have happened if another Chris had been wrapped up like he was supposed to, because who would have been starting that era? That would have been Chris Leak, who would have had a year behind Casey Clausen, then it would have been the Chris Leak era. Now, granted, Chris Leak came in as the enemy then, but, again, it's two eras. It's two different quarterbacks. We mentioned what would happen to Sims, what would happen to Chris Leak. And those were decent eras right there. Maybe they wouldn't have been much better, but, man, it was just for nothing else, it would have gave Sims and Leak in their years a year to sit behind the veteran, and then they learn, they're ready, they practice, they're in a weight room, they go through that spring practice, and then it's I'm not going to say seamless, but it's a nice transition, right?
Versus a Casey Clausen coming in as a freshman.
Yeah.
On a what was it? 2 and 3
Alabama game.
2 and 3 team, and then 2004 as a true freshman coming in and starting from Jump Street.
Yeah, but I remember with that 04, you didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. And then all of a sudden they released the depth chart, and it showed 1A, 1B, Brent Schaeffer, Eric Ainge. And it's like, no way. There's no way. And yeah, it was way. And that was a fun season, man. I mean, those Schaeffer started, Ainge kind of took over. They both played along the way. There was the first game was UNLV. Let me see here. Was Florida game 2? It was still when Florida was game 2, was it not?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll never forget that, guys. And I don't know if either one of you guys were there or not, but I was there, and that was the infamous Will Hoyt game. Never forget this, man.
What a crazy game, man.
What a crazy game. We're sitting there. This was a good back and forth. This was a good SEC football game. It was Ron Zook was the coach in Florida. Leak was the quarterback for Florida. Florida had some talent. Good back and forth. I'll never forget this, and this is honest to goodness truth. I was sitting there watching at the half, and Tennessee was coming. I was sitting down in, I can't remember. I was in just to the right of the uprights of it, but I watched Will Hoyt kick at halftime. He was off, and I was like, he was missing extra points at halftime just out practicing stuff. Well, what happened later on, because I was like, man, I hope he gets this fixed. And then comes up I can't remember the quarter he missed. It missed the extra point. Tennessee's down a point right there. And then, of course, obviously redeemed himself by coming back with that bomb 50-yarder.
There's no way. I remember, I'm like you talking about it. I can remember the exact moment. Dauber, there's no way you had any confidence that Will Hoyt was going to bang that home. Like there's no chance after missing an extra point.
I'm pretty sure that's one I stood and watched like this.
Yeah. Yeah. What a crazy finish.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what you come to expect in those tight Tennessee Florida games. It seems to be it's either that or somebody's getting ran out of the stadium.
Yeah, and that was and again, being there at it, that was the loudest. Fortunately, I was there for 98 Arkansas after the Sterner fumble, and I was there for the Will Hoyt 50-yarder. I don't know which one was louder. Both of them, it was crazy.
The 98 Florida game was also – that was pretty loud. Oklahoma, that was super loud too.
That's the game everybody talks about Neyland being as loud as it's ever been. That Oklahoma game.
The 98 Florida game, I was in the upper level, and I swear it felt like it was moving. I was in the lower level in the Oklahoma game, right up behind the Oklahoma section, behind their band, and so loud. And that's had some Oklahoma fans in front of me say, "Man, is it like this all the time?" I said, "I wish." I just had graduated a few years before. I said, it's in our heyday, it's been pretty loud, but it's usually not like this. But man, Neyland is an amazing place to be when everything's clicking and the Vols are on the correct side of the scoreboard.
But how many times have you been there? And we talk about it all the time on the channel that this fan base shows up. We always show up. Like, how many times have you been there where Neyland is rocking and rolling?
Oh, listen. I was there at the BYU game the week after Georgia State. And it was still full, still good atmosphere. And then we did what we did against BYU.
But how about when the streak ended?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The two of us together against Florida. What a moment. Like that is lifetime memories.
But listen, being down 21-0.
Hey, you don't want to see the text messages. You don't want to see the text messages being sent.
And then have that change. I mean, I think back and that's and I know we're kind of getting off of the subject here. That's what the passion is for me. It's the experiences sitting and watching games with my dad and my grandfather and friends and family, cookouts, tailgates around football. It's those moments. It's those moments I want to pass on to my son and stuff like that. That's what gets you. That's what it means to me. It's not just about wins and losses or this or that.
It's about memories.
It's about memories. It's about fun.
I can segue this back to 2004 because Indy Kid and I were talking just before we went live. Look, I'm a diehard Tennessee fan. You guys know this. You've heard the stories. But 2004, the start of the Eric Ainge era, was the first year that I ever attended a game. And as sad and pathetic as it is, it was a Louisiana Tech game. Third game of the season. It was a blowout. It was nothing special. But I went with a dude that you guys both know. You guys both met Chris. And he's no longer with us. And it's like, I still have the jersey that he wore to games. Like his wife gave it to me when he passed away. And it's like, those are memories that you can never take away from me. And it's a Louisiana Tech game that meant absolutely nothing, but it's, just piggybacking on what you said, Dauber. It's about experiences and memories. And that's what makes Tennessee football special to all three of us. But yeah, 2004, Louisiana Tech, first game I ever attended. And man, I'll never forget it. But Any Kid, get us back on track. Let's get this Eric Ainge, Brent Schaeffer story rolling here.
Well, just to kind of go back to that point, you mentioned that, a meaningless Louisiana Tech game. That's when games like that, Tennessee was still running these teams out of the building. Because I was there, I had 50-yard line seats, or about 45, 50 upper deck. It was awesome. It was a fun game. It was laid back, and we watched Tennessee do what we expected them to do. Really fun game, fun year there. But Yeah, the Ainge Schaeffer experience was cool. It was, Ainge took over, but we never saw the full potential of that partnership because while Ainge was predominantly the starter, of course, played Auburn. I think that was when Auburn claimed their national championship that year. Didn't Auburn go undefeated then and didn't even play for the national championship that year? Because I know I went to the game in Knoxville.
What year are you talking about? 04, Tennessee beat Auburn twice. Or no, they lost to Auburn twice.
They lost
it,
right. Yeah. Auburn was 13-0 and 8-0 in conference play.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I went to the home game against Auburn, and Auburn blew Tennessee out. Auburn was loaded then. Of course, that was one of the things they had. That's when they had Cadillac and Ronnie Brown. Cadillac Williams, of course, was a former Tennessee commitment. Yeah. And he
34-10 was the score.
Yep. And then Tennessee played them tough in the SEC championship. That was when I still to this day got some questioning on some official calls in that game that Tennessee screwed Tennessee out some points.
You can tell it's the second episode we've recorded the evening.
Yeah. But fun year. But I remember Tennessee went down to number 3 Georgia. As when Georgia still had Green and Pollock. Mm-hmm. Could not stand those guys.
Two of the worst.
I mean, but hey, they were great Georgia players. Hats off to them. Nothing but respect, but could not stand them because they wore us out. But Tennessee double-digit underdog. And that was one thing in the former era. If he was an underdog,
got the most out of him.
You didn't want to play him. It was like, that was one thing I liked about Fulmer. You doubted Fulmer. He would step up. It was when you expected a lot out of him, he kind of got complacent along the way. But went down to number 3 Georgia, true freshman quarterback, 19-14 win. And something that bothered me that year, I remember this was Georgia, I think, was ranked higher than Tennessee throughout the year. And the only losses Tennessee had was 2 to Auburn. And they lost to Notre Dame, and that was when Ainge got hurt right before the half. And when Rick Clausen came in, they went ultra-conservative right there. But it was a good year. It was a fun year. But something that bothered me, I remember because CBS showed a lot of Tennessee games that year, but they kept going, saying Georgia deserved to be in the SEC championship over Tennessee because they were ranked higher. No, Tennessee beat them. Tennessee earned it that year. And Tennessee hurt a lot of feelings when they went down and beat Georgia because they weren't supposed to, and they did it. But I remember the South Carolina game that stood out to me. That was when they started a little pattern with Schaeffer and Ainge. They were rotating them, just consistent. You may see them Ainge one place, Schaeffer the next. And they really was lighting South Carolina up with that pack. It was working awesome. It was a mixed. And then I think Schaeffer got hurt. That game got put out for the year. So they didn't really get to experiment with that any more than they did. And that was the end of the Schaeffer era in Knoxville. If I'm not mistaken, he got kicked off in the offseason next year.
Yeah, April 05.
Didn't see him again. But then, Ainge took over. It was the Ainge show. And then right before the half, Tennessee called I'm trying to think who the center was. Tennessee's center against Notre Dame was out. So the backup was in. Missed the block right before the halftime. Ainge got killed, out for the year. Shoulder issue, which then affected Ainge in the 2005 season as well. But Rick Clausen took over. Again, I thought it was when Rick took over, they went ultra conservative. It cost them that game. And but the rest of the way, they did a good job. And but an interesting year, a fun year, because they went to the Cotton Bowl, blew Texas A&M out. And then, you transition to 05. Once again, top 5. Got your quarterback coming. You got 2 quarterbacks coming back. Who's going to be the quarterback? And I've seen when it was the one article I've seen on the fall Tennessee football, I think Swain commented, I think he was in on that and mentioned that the players and all, it was supposed to be Rick Clausen. It was a quarterback, and then former switcherooed and went to Ainge. And Ainge did not have it that year.
But look, when you look at it, when you look at talent and what those guys brought to the table, Rick Clausen, I don't know that Rick Clausen should have even started for Vanderbilt. I hate to talk bad about a guy. Rick Clausen was not a SEC caliber quarterback. Eric Ainge was. It should have never been Rick Clausen's team. Period. End of story. I stand firm on that. I just don't, like you talk about with Brent Schaeffer and Eric Ainge, it worked. Like typically, if you have two quarterbacks, that means you don't have a single quarterback, right? Like you don't want to be playing. For some weird reason, it worked. And like Tennessee fan base, like we loved both guys, right? Like that was a fun year. But coming back to 05, I just don't think Rick Clausen was ever an SEC level quarterback. I don't.
He was adequate. I mean, he didn't have the talent of the other two guys, but I think he, depending on how you managed him. Okay. One thing I do remember in 05, I remember being in Knoxville for the Georgia game, and, Clausen did not have an arm at all. Rick Clausen did. And they called a play from the right hash and threw it all the way across to the other side for like
he had to crow hop. He had to crow hop to make those long passes.
Yeah, and it got picked off. And you got to know your quarterback and what throws he can make. I don't think he was awful by any means. He was definitely not the most talented. He was a smart quarterback, but I just think at times they tried to manage him like he had an Ainge arm, and he didn't.
That's funny though, Boogie. You bring up saying, I don't even think he would have started at Vanderbilt, but you got to remember, he transferred from LSU.
Yep.
He transferred from being recruited by Nick Saban to LSU, where he started a few games. He redshirted behind Rohan Davey and was there. Started a few games, and then I think I ultimately became a backup there, and then transferred to Tennessee because of the connection with his brother being there and all that. But it's not like he was a scrub. It's not like he was a nobody. But yeah, I agree. He wasn't as talented as some of the other players that we had there that were out with injury or what have you.
Did the mismanagement of 2005, that quarterback position got mismanaged all year long? Because you guys remember the LSU game down there. That was just kind of backtrack a little bit on that season. Tennessee, I'd have to pull up the record on that. I don't have that in front of me. I still got 04 up, but I know Tennessee went to the Swamp. That was Urban Meyer's first year. It was expected Tennessee was going to go in there and put it to Florida. Didn't happen.
Tennessee was ranked number 5.
05.
Florida was number 6.
05, they were 5-6. So we dropped under 500. Yeah.
But that
05 is the year for me. That's the year. That's when it was done. It was over.
Yeah, and that was Ainge went down to LSU. Good God, that was one of the worst. Other than Nathan Peterman, that was probably the worst quarterback performance that I remember in Tennessee. Hit one of them.
But they came out with the W.
Yeah, they went to Clausen though. Had they not went to Clausen, because remember Ainge?
Yeah,
he was getting sacked. And he just turned around and threw it up,
threw it over his head,
right to a lineman that went in, and then Rick Clausen come in and led a nice comeback.
Yeah,
this is a theme. Chris Sims, Chris Leak did the mismanagement of that quarterback position, cost Tennessee Jimmy Clausen.
Mm-hmm.
And
but once again, going back to the Leak brothers, you can't base your decisions now on little brother Jimmy and little brother Chris. You can't base your decisions on that. But it's looking at the grand scheme of things. That's what happened.
So are you saying that we don't need to put all of our eggs in the Arch Manning basket?
I knew you were going to say that name. He is not coming to Tennessee. Spoiler alert. He ain't coming to Tennessee.
I don't think he is either.
I don't think it's even close.
Who knows what Heupel does and how this offense gets rolling and clicking? Everybody may want to come here. You put up 40, 45 points a game.
Maybe.
That looks good for a quarterback.
What something mentioned at the beginning of this that we didn't touch upon was when this slide started. This was the Mike Hamilton era here. And I don't think we can overstress just how big that Doug Dickey leaving was. And I think he held Philip Fulmer to an accountability level that Mike Hamilton did not right there. And, it changed the game. And I don't know if Fulmer thought he was – and again, this is assumption. This is opinion. Did Fulmer think he was bigger than Hamilton or anything? You got a guy that's not been an athletic director coming in telling me what to do. And I know Fulmer doesn't have good things to say about Hamilton. And I definitely think Hamilton was not a very good AD. He was more of a brick and mortar guy. He could raise money. He could update your facilities and stuff. But as far as, when Dickey was there, football was thriving. Baseball was thriving as well. Okay. Basketball wasn't so much. People like to say Dickey neglected basketball. No, he had some decent hires that just didn't work out because it was pretty well thought of hires because you had Kevin O'Neill, you had Jerry Green, you had Buzz Peterson right there. A lot of people thought Buzz Peterson was a really good hire. It just didn't work out. Mike Hamilton comes in, football drops off, baseball drops off. Look at the levels both of them went to under Mike Hamilton. Football and baseball went in the freaking toilet. And they thankfully baseball has gotten it right. Football has never gotten it right from when Mike Hamilton took over. And some of the facility, the Neyland Stadium looks great. Thompson Bowling looks great. Lindsey Nelson looks like The Walking Dead almost. But there just wasn't the accountability. And I know Fulmer, and that's along the time what presidents were changing, admin kept changing. But one thing along the way, and I've seen Philip Fulmer likes to blame it on the different presidents, the different ADs. Who was the football coach during this time? It was still Philip Fulmer. That doesn't change how you coach football right there. And I agree there was not the accountability. We didn't get dumb. We didn't get lazy. Well, what happened then? How are you going to blame the AD because you started not coaching, you started not recruiting, you started not holding your players accountable? That still goes back to Philip Fulmer. There's just – you blame it on Mike Hamilton, you blame it on whichever president, whichever chancellor was there along the way. The bottom line is Philip Fulmer lost control of his program. He didn't evolve. I'm not going to say he got lazy. Maybe he didn't. He just didn't change. He didn't keep up with the times. He still thought what worked in 1998 would work in 2005, 6, 7, 8. And it wasn't the case right there. And let's face the facts. David Cutcliffe prolonged Philip Fulmer's career because had David Cutcliffe not came back in 2006, we may have been searching for a coach sooner than we did.
Yeah, I mean, look at the difference between 2005, 2006, because, we talked about in the first episode of this little series, what's your turning point? And for me, it was 2005 when they lost that Vanderbilt game, 28-24, and it was that kind of slap in the face when you realized we're not going to the postseason. Tennessee's not going to play in a bowl game. But then, like you said, David Cutcliffe comes back, 2006. All of a sudden, you kind of bounce back, and that's kind of been the narrative, right? What are we, 3 episodes into this thing, 4 episodes into this thing? Philip Fulmer, the end of it's been up and down. And then he comes back 2006 with David Cutcliffe, wins 9 games. 2007, what do they win there? Win 10 games.
10 games,
and then
go to the SEC championship.
I'm telling you guys, I said it in the first episode of this series. How important, how crucial is David Cutcliffe to the success or the demise of Tennessee football? the proof is there, guys. It's David Cutcliffe, and that's why there's so many times it's been brought up. Should David Cutcliffe had been the head coach? Should you have brought him back as a head coach? And I don't know that things would have worked out if you did. I really don't know that was the answer, but I can freaking guarantee Philip Fulmer's success or lack of success was pretty much based on David Cutcliffe.
Tied to David Cutcliffe.
Yeah.
Yeah, something. Yeah, go ahead, Dauber. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I have always said that Fulmer was only as good as his assistant coaches.
Yeah.
And you can go back and you can look at who he had there and the years that they were there. And basically, just by looking at that, you could say, well, their record was probably this. Because if you look at the years that you didn't have Cutcliffe, it showed. And the offense struggled. And there was regression. There was inconsistencies during quarterback play. Of course, I know you had injuries and other things going on there, but that's football. That you always have that, and you always have to coach for the next man up. You got to have that second guy ready to come in because you don't know how the game's going to go.
And that coaching staff was there a long time. There wasn't a lot of changes, and I think, especially on the defensive side, they had that camaraderie and stuff. But it was a good defensive staff. It was fine, but I don't know. But in 2004 you'd brought in Trooper Taylor, which I thought he was a game changer at that time. The running backs, you had two running backs in 2004 go for over 1,000 yards. Riggs and Houston both went. That was big, I thought, to go along with the quarterback play. 2005, it just wasn't there. You had a lot of the same. Now, they had some injuries, some big injuries that year with 2005. I don't know how Randy Sanders went from being able to coach as well as he did in 2004. He was, let's face it, he was the scapegoat in 2005. He was the scapegoat for that season because he resigned after South Carolina. And fair or not, I think Philip Fulmer overruled some of those quarterback choices where I think it was pretty well known that Sanders thought Clausen was the guy and that Ainge didn't have it then. So I don't know. I just think that, and I reference it in basketball videos with Rick Barnes. When his guys leave, they leave for promotions. Here, nobody was leaving for promotions at Tennessee. Trooper Taylor, I think, was having differences with John Chavis or the defensive staff down there. I don't know if they were what it was. A lot of people on that football staff, especially those who had been there, they got complacent. They didn't like it when new blood. Hell, that's why Rodney Garner left in the late 90s. Didn't get along with guys on the other side or didn't get along with guys that were there. Rodney Garner helped bring in that 98 national championship. He recruited some of those big guys. Trooper Taylor was a game changer, coach and recruiter down there, no matter what position he coached. And I think some coaches didn't keep up and they were comfortable with their position and got fat and lazy.
Well, and that's a good point right there. You bring up Trooper Taylor, and we talked about it a couple episodes ago. I talked about the change and the evolution of college football as a whole, and how Tennessee was kind of stuck in the smash mouth Tennessee football, and you had that kind of spread and all of that starting to emerge, and you bring a guy like Trooper Taylor in who is younger and he has that passion, that intensity on the sidelines that some of these players relate to. And I'm not a big fan of the term a player's coach, but I think he related well to the players. He related well to the youth, and
he's a Coach Eckler.
Yeah, and that was something that I don't know if it was as absent on those teams as we've seen from the Tennessee teams the last couple of years, but that emotion and that intensity on the sidelines and that holding each other accountable. I think that's something that we can look at some of these teams that, did come back from, having a down year and that rebound. We've talked about the coaching and all of that, but you do have some of these guys, some leaders on the field. And I think some of that plays into, coming off a 5-6 season, going to 9-4, or, some people will say that 07 team backed their way into the SEC championship. Well, no, they didn't back their way. They won enough games to get in. They did the things that they were supposed to. They fell short, the 10-4 overall record, but I don't think you can back your way in. You can have to rely on other teams to beat some others and get in, but that's why everybody plays the games. It's not just because of a roster or what it looks like on paper. You play it and let the chips fall where they may.
Another thing that I'm looking at here too that began this downfall was recruiting. Now, up to the 2004 class, you had some pretty good classes who contributed, but 2005, this was a bad year all around for Tennessee football. Obviously, you had the bad season, but then recruiting, national ranking number 4. But let's go through this recruiting class. This was game changer, and I don't mean this in a good way. Demetrius Morley didn't even finish at Tennessee. Was okay when he played. He wasn't great. Rico McCoy was solid, good player. LaMarcus Coker, when he was playing, he was a game changer. Got kicked off. Jonathan Crompton, it took him 4 years to pan out. Chris Scott was good. Josh McNeil, I thought, was decent. Montario Hardesty was decent. Raymond Henderson, booted. Todd Cox never made it. Lucas Taylor was good. Slick Shelley left. Adam Myers-White never contributed. Andre Mathis, another highly ranked, never contributed. Vlad Richard, not much. Jeff Cottom, same. Malcolm Rawls left. Antonio Wardlow, nothing. Josh Briscoe, decent player. Dan Williams, overachieved for sure. Marcellus Johnson, meh. Austin Rogers, I thought he was okay. Ricardo Kemp, I think he left. Wes Brown was a good player. DeMonte Bolden, he was committed for about 10 recruiting classes, it seemed like, before he made it in. He was Gerald Williams before Gerald Williams. Didn't do much there. That's where it started to turn. You've got a number 4 ranked class, and majority of that class did not pan out.
What was that? Your 04 class? Or
that was the 05 class. So
look at 06. After that huge disappointing season, how far recruiting dropped off. So to your point, 04 may have been here and then they underachieved, but then your 06, 07 recruiting numbers dropped off. And that's why you can go look at, 2006. Tennessee bounced back 9 wins, 2007, 10 wins, but then recruiting catches up, right? Because underachieving there, the class you just ran down completely underachieved. And then the next 2 classes were so far dropped off. That was the demise of Philip Fulmer, because 08, we all know what happened, and that's what we're going to be touching on in the next episode. But that's a great point that you bring up there, the underachievement of that one class followed by 2. I don't even know if I would say mediocre, but I'll say
subpar.
Subpar. That's a good way. So underachievers followed by 2 subpar recruiting classes, and that was the death of the Philip Fulmer era.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we've talked about a lot on Talkin' Vols Network is the recruiting and how that it's a cycle. But man, if you get behind in recruiting, somebody else is stepping up, and that's the thing that as Tennessee kind of fell off, you had other teams that were now competing against for these kids that we weren't before, because you got the big name guys going to the top schools, and now you're competing with the likes of South Carolina, who's on the rise during this time. You got Kentucky, and they had a couple years where had some success, started getting guys that were having a Tennessee hat and a Kentucky hat on the table. Stuff like that. That definitely plays into this whole, Tennessee kind of dropped from where they were, and you had other teams rising. So it wasn't necessarily just a Tennessee thing. And the recruiting thing, that's huge in all this.
Yeah, and you look at, of course, you talked about 04, 05. Good season. You had that momentum. You had that good class. Didn't pan out, but then the 05 season happened. Subpar recruiting class ranked 29th. And, sometimes you can have lower classes and they'll pan out, but you had Jock McClendon, decent player. Walter Fisher, nothing. Quentin Hancock, nothing. Blake Garrettson got kicked off before he ever played a game. Same with Lee Smith. Nick Stevens, meh. Ramon Johnson, okay. Chase Nelson, nothing. Dustin Lindsay, don't know if he ever played down there. Justin Garrett, nothing. Luke Stocker was a good tight end down there. Darius Myers, Cody Pope. They had their moments, I guess. Gerald Williams finally made it in, did okay. Stephon Rains, nothing. Dorian Davis, nothing. Daniel Lincoln sucked as a kicker. Chad Cunningham, punter. Gerard Shaw, Victor Thomas, Lamarcus Thompson. And then Brent Vinson, that was the first of his. Of course, he was a good prospect. Ended up another one. Kicked off after like a year or so down there. Just like a development, like a recruiting, like a discipline, and it went down. And again, I don't know if they got lazy and got dumb. I don't know. It's just a lot of things, but things started happening in these years that did not happen in the big time successful year. I don't know if just there wasn't. I don't know. Maybe there were better play. Obviously, we know the leadership of Al Wilson. We know the leadership of Peyton Manning, Leonard Little, these type guys. Casey Clausen. We know these leadership things, but what happened along the way here? 05 was a disaster, loaded with talent. Every position on that team was absolutely loaded. 06, still a strong bit of talent right there. And let's face facts. David Cutcliffe fixed Eric Ainge. The 2006-07 Eric Ainge was nothing like the 05. So David Cutcliffe if you weren't a believer in David Cutcliffe prior to then, I think 06 would have made you a believer in him. But, some close games, some tough losses in 06. 07, they bounced back, and then Cutcliffe again leaves and goes to Duke. And
very next year,
Philip Fulmer made a horrible – and these decisions we can look at with the different eras that we're getting into. Simple decisions – led to ousters. And Dave Clawson's obviously a pretty smart dude, a pretty good coach. But, something you can't do, and this was along the times that more of your internet base, more of your social media started coming in. I don't know if they started listening more to the fans or not. You can't listen to the fans as a coach. And, Fulmer had the chance at the end of when Cutcliffe left. It was either Dave Clawson or it was a package of Mike DeBoer, Scott Loeffler, which would also brought Ryan Mallett with them. Philip Fulmer chooses the claw fence, and the rest is history. Tennessee football has never, ever recovered from that. And what would have happened if Tennessee, this 08 is going to be a whole different ball game, obviously, but the 04 through 07, there was hope that this program was still Tennessee, but there was still, the conference was better. At this point, we mentioned earlier Saban at LSU. Of course, Saban had gone to the NFL, but he came back to Alabama, and that's been a nightmare for everyone since. Mark Richt was still there during that time. He was competing with Mark Richt. Urban Meyer, hot new coach, Florida. It's Spurrier at South Carolina.
Les Miles coming to LSU. That's the thing. And I wanted to touch on this about recruiting. You were talking about, a number 4 class, a number 10 or 11, and then a number 20. Yeah, those sound good in the whole scheme of everybody in college football. But you got to remember, you got a 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th ranked class, how many other SEC schools are ahead of you? How many other SEC Eastern Division schools are ahead of you? That's I think where the whole drop off in the talent pool, and especially you're too deep, you're three deep. I think that's where Tennessee really started falling behind in this period of time. You ran down a couple of classes of guys that didn't contribute at all. Whereas you look at some of these teams today, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, somebody gets hurt, they're plugging somebody in that there's no drop off. We have somebody go down and get hurt, at a key position, quarterback. You look at the Ainge, Schaeffer, Clausen, all that right there. There was a drop off in play. There was guys that weren't necessarily ready for that position, that time, and the level of play fell off. I mean, it's tough, and I think I talked about it there last episode. You go, this is the kind of rise of the SEC conference, and week in, week out, it's tough. It's a tough road, and you're playing, number 6 Florida, number 4 LSU, number 5 Georgia. Week in and week out, it's tough competition, and if you don't have your stuff in line and in order, and guys that are just as good coming off the bench, man, you're really behind.
Yeah, and mention recruiting too. We mentioned the 05 class. 06 was ranked 29th. They had a good season 2006. Come back with the number 4 ranked class in 07. I don't know which ended up being the total bust of a class, 05 or 07. 07 was ranked number 4 overall. Eric Berry saved the 07 class. Of course, you had him. He was one of the all-time greats. But then let's look. Ben Martin was a 5-star coming in. He didn't play like a 5-star. Chris Donald bust. Lennon Career left, got kicked off. Gerald Jones was decent. Brent Vinson kicked off. Kenny O'Neill, everybody was fired up about him coming out of JUCO. Nothing. Ahmad Page, 4-star receiver. Nothing. Nevin McKenzie. This was along the line time they started recruiting guys in moving positions, recruiting these bigger guys, smaller guys, and moving them to line. But I don't think that was a good transition there. McKenzie, he had his moments. Todd Campbell, bust. D'Angelo Willingham, if I'm not mistaken, he may have gotten kicked off. Darius Saltel, 4-star offensive lineman, bust. Deshaun Barnes, nothing. Denarius Moore was an overachiever, good player. Chris Walker was a decent player. Darrell Vereen, nothing. C.J. Fleming, nothing. William Brenfield, Donald Langley, Anthony Anderson, B.J. Coleman, Rufus
How dare
Williams.
you talk about Donald Langley? That's our buddy.
That's our buddy right there. Yeah, he.
How dare you?
The only one I listed, Kevin Cooper was an okay fullback. Dennis Rogan, I think Rogan got kicked off though before he left. That may have been under Kiffin.
And that's
Rogan was a decent player, but then Savion Frazier, Josh Hawkins, Art Evans, Tyler Maples, Corey Hall, bust. That you can't have a number 4 and number 2 top 5 classes just bust out like that, and then surround it with 2 classes barely in the top 30.
So what does that go back to? And that's something that I talked about a lot the last couple of seasons under Pruitt and company. It's maybe goes back to development, but a lot of it goes back to even before that, the evaluation of talent and the guys you're actually recruiting and bringing in.
It's just hard to know what truly happened because clearly Philip Fulmer knows how to develop talent. He knows how to evaluate talent.
But
or did he get?
Listen to what Indy Kid just said there, though. All those names that he ran off that had no impact.
Oh, I know.
And then
look at the first half of his career.
Right.
Is he riding Johnny Major's coattails? Because that's what a lot of people say. A lot of people say it.
And another thing, we hit on it either the first or second episode of this series.
We're so confused because we
the discipline. And how many names did he just rattle off? Guys that got kicked off, dismissed from the team. And I think that is another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with some of Fulmer's issues and lack of control of the team, and really goes back to the recruiting and not having the leadership on the team, guys holding the other guys accountable. Guys like Al Wilson, who would get up in somebody's face about their play on the field and be like, hey, you're out of position, get it right. And I'm sure those guys were in the locker room also holding each other accountable.
And on the practice field.
Yeah, you don't see that from these teams that had all these issues. And I don't know that it's, the internal strife and all that, I think, is much more played out socially via social media and all that in today's day and age. We hear a whole lot more about that type of stuff. For some reason, things just can't be kept in-house. And I'm sure there were teams that had issues and stuff in the locker room, but they dealt with it. They dealt with it internally, and you had guys step up. I think these teams that had records that struggled, I think they lacked that, that true leader to kind of step up and hold those guys accountable and demand the best out of them on the field and on the practice field, like you just said, Boogie.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Look, next Tuesday, new episode's going to be dropping. It's going to be a tough one because we are going to talk about 08. We're going to talk about the claw fence. We're going to talk about the demise of Philip Fulmer. We're going to put a big fat bow on the Philip Fulmer era in next week's episode. So tune in for that. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. Leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think of the Eric Ainge era. What do you think of David Cutcliffe coming back? How much did David Cutcliffe save Philip Fulmer? Drop us the comments. Leave them below. We'll try to interact as much as possible. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. For Dauber, for the Indie Kid, my name is Boogie Bentley. This is the Talkin' Vols Network. Go Big Orange.
The songs howl like me, poets sat in our chains, soaking moonlit falls, unbroken past this inundated orb that we draw home, and it's night and I'm alone and I'm